Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, good. Very good. Now, I am not a theologian. I am not an academic. And I do think of myself as a person who is a social inventor and also an artist. And what I mean by social inventor is that throughout my lifetime, I would see that certain ways of relating were missing, so create it, right? And as Bill mentions, support circles is one of those inventions. There are several others. Right now we're working on an inclusive video game, a video game that people can play, which gives them the experience of actually being inclusive. And what I mean by inclusion is valuing diversity. And valuing is a big thing. And I will be speaking on Wednesday. I'll get more into the theory of it then. Today I'd rather talk about stories or tell a few stories. By the way, the reason I'm here today, and not only on Wednesday, is because Bill wanted a woman up here. He valued my diversity in that sense. Right. Not too many men. So one of the things that I am not disabled. Because there is no such thing. It's one of those things that's been implanted into our brains like it's real, and it's not real. The correct use, and I only have 20 minutes, so I could be way more subtle, and there is a book, and I'll get it here, I'll get it here and I'll sell it to you cheap and all that stuff. But the correct use of the word disabled in English and a few other languages is when something doesn't work anymore. So if I say, I've disabled the bomb, you know that that bomb isn't a bomb anymore. It might make a great paperweight. Depending on its size, it might be part of a building. It's very common in South Asia for people to take those bigger bombs and use them as a column in their buildings to hold up stuff. But its function as a bomb isn't there anymore. And if they say on the traffic report that that disabled car is blocking the intersection of Bay and Dundas, you know it's going to take longer to get here because that car is not working as a car. It's working great as a traffic barrier and as a news item, but not in the sense that it was intended to work. So if I say that a person is disabled, I'm actually telling you that that person is not a person. And I don't think that's what you mean, although sometimes we all act like that. But that's not really what you mean, and it's certainly not what I mean. So I don't use that word in that way. There's a lot of things that I am. I have a form of muscular dystrophy. They told me I'd be dead when I was 2, and when I was 4, and when I was 6, and when I was 15, and when I was 30, and then about every 6 months ever after. And I'm 63. So, among other things, is I'm stubborn, right? So, lots of things that I am. And one of the stories, okay, this is the first story I'll tell you. By the way, I do rarely speak about God, especially in public, because it just gets people all pissed off, right? It doesn't really communicate very well. But so I'll tell you what I'm seeing in my head when I talk about God. You do not have to have the same images that I have, okay? But you know, I still operate in God language like I'm about 10. He's still a he. He's still out there somewhere. You know, and I argue with him all the time. So when I was, in fact, about 10 years old, this is what was going on in my life. I had done everything you could imagine with the support of my mother and one of my brownie leaders to get every badge in brownies. Throwing the ball. I had just a little bit of use of my arms in those days, so we worked that out. You know, semaphore. My mother helped me make a doll, and I put the doll's arms through all the semaphore codes, passed the test. Cooking, God knows I had them all. Literally had them all. Because I was already a year late to fly up to Girl Guides, so I had all this extra time and brownies. I just kept on getting patches, knowing that one of these days the great ceremony would happen and I would fly up to Girl Guides. And there are other things going on, but you'll get the point in a minute. By the way, the church ran brownies, right? Well, the senior brownie leader took me aside one day and said, "You don't really want to go to Girl Guides. We don't have any handicapped kids in Girl Guides." I was devastated. And not very long after that, the Sunday school teacher came to me and said, "You're too old to go to Sunday school. You can't come here anymore." And the next Sunday it was like day one, day two, day three, it was all together, right? Bang, bang, bang. I was sitting in the back of the church because that's the only place I could sit. And I was behind a row of heads, couldn't see anything, and I was in tears. And this voice from the front is talking about God so loves the world. And I said to myself, you know, God, you're either the worst damn liar, you're an evil thing, or you'll help me find a way. Because you couldn't have given me so much passion and then cut it off unless you're an absolute monster. And if you're not a monster, you'll help me find a way. I had only one choice, right? I really had only one choice. Because if I believed that God is a monster, I would have certainly died. So I chose to believe that God would indeed be on the journey with me of finding ways. So far, so good. So along the way, I run into this situation of, is it true that I'm disabled? This would be more like when I'm in my mid-30s and, you know, I've had some political breakthroughs. You have to read the book, right? So lots and lots is going on. I'd met Marcia Forrest. Lots and lots and lots and lots is going on. And there's something about the word disabled that doesn't work, but I can't figure it out because, and this part is important, because you see, we grow up in a world that believes in disability, and whether or not we ever get that label ourselves, whether or not we ever get that label ourselves, we know what it means, right? So I realized that I had already learned how to be a victim. I'd already learned how to be the one who is helped. I'd already learned how to be the one who is not as good as, long before I ever realized that I was the one carrying the label. So, but it just didn't make sense because the journey was going in amazing ways, right? So I started to use the word, and I still use the word, gifted. Let me define the word gift for you, because you throw it around a lot. But I bet you haven't really thought about what it means, right? So this is the Judith Snow version of what the word gift means. It means some quality about yourself or another person that when it's brought into relationship in a valued way, allows for an opportunity to emerge. So when Paul says there are gifts in the Christian community, he's talking about qualities that people have that if we relate to them as valued qualities, they're good for the body of Christ. They help in the healing and growth of the community. So I say, and others I think too, but I'm talking from my own experience, that this thing, this circumstance, is in fact a gift. And by the way, Christ also says that a gift and a cross are the same thing. There ain't no gift that doesn't cause you lots of trouble. Just ask anybody who's a pianist, a concert pianist, and has carpal tunnel syndrome, right? All the gifts are hard to bear, but they're gifts. And so let me tell you another story. I live in a co-op, which I don't right now. I did live in a co-op that was intentionally inclusive. And by the way, Tom, we need to talk about what is inclusion. But for now, valuing diversity. And there's this woman who's now a very good friend of mine. Her gift was and is that she would walk into people's apartments without knocking, ask them a whack of questions, most of which you'd be embarrassed if somebody asked you, and then took the answers that people gave her, went into the next apartment without knocking, told everybody what she just learned, and then asked them similar questions, right? Now, her label, would get her good funding in the province of Ontario. But her gift is this. When we all moved into that co-op, we all moved in the same month. 53 of us. We didn't know each other. Within 3 weeks, we all knew each other. And we were all talking with each other, if only to try to figure out how to handle her, right? Now, this is the real point. A person died in our co-op a few weeks after the co-op opened. And because of this woman, we realized that there were a bunch of us who were feeling quite sick. Now, you see, if it wasn't for her, I would know that I feel sick. But because of her, we knew that we feel sick. And we were able to discover very quickly that the builders of the co-op, the funders, had taken out the proper air circulation system and put in a cheaper one. And because the building was built over a car park, we were being poisoned by the car fumes. Without this woman's extraordinary gift, more than one person would have died, probably half a dozen or more, before public health realized that there was an issue in our building. I'll tell you one more story. I could tell you dozens of stories. There's this young man who's now in his 30s. I met him when he was 11. He doesn't speak. His name is Peter. And Peter's gift is such that he has profound trust of people, because he couldn't know that when he goes to the next room, there'll be a floor to stand on, and there'll be chairs to sit in, and there'll be people to be with. So he goes purely by trust from one situation to the next. And his parents highly valued his capacity to trust people. And they realized when he was in special education that he was beginning to lose this trust, because he'd had so many situations where he'd either been bored to tears or physically mishandled, that he was beginning to withdraw. And so they took a big risk, and they hired David. And they gave David this job description. They said, go find places where Peter is welcome. And we have a subway system and a pretty good bus system in Toronto. So David decided that what he would do is hop on a bus every day with Peter. And everywhere that Peter wanted to get off the bus or get off the subway, he would go there with Peter. And within 3 months, Peter was stuffing envelopes at certain neighborhood organizations. He was organizing chairs and meeting spaces for other neighborhood organizations. And there's another gift that Peter has, which he shares with many of you in this room. That's Peter loves food. He loves everything there is about food. So he was always there when it's time for making lunch, cleaning up after lunch, setting up for lunch, eating lunch, all that stuff. Now, it turns out that on the subway line, there is, I think it's still there, a little group of monks of the Order of St. John. And every Thursday, they would have lunch for whoever showed up. So guess who starts showing up every Thursday? Peter, right? Peter and David. And one of these monks is also an Anglican priest. And he was really excited by Peter. And he welcomed Peter to come and serve at the altar during the communion service, during the Eucharist. Now, Peter loves food. And Peter understood at a very profound level that the Eucharist is a meal. And the priest says that through having the experience of Peter's deep gratitude for being present at the meal of the Eucharist, his own vocation was deeply, profoundly renewed. And out of that renewal for the priest, the congregation suddenly began to grow. It went from being a tiny little church to being quite a decent-sized congregation, and many of the families that came were families that had other people with unusual gifts in them, and they began to have meetings, and they developed housing projects, and they developed funding streams, and they developed ways to welcome each other and host each other, an entirely different attitude of renewal entered into this congregation. So, my question to you is, who actually represents God better in this story? David or Peter? Because, and you said it this morning, you get all excited about being Christian Horizons and helping the handicapped and all that stuff, right? We all kind of get that God likes the David side of things. But you get that God likes the Peter side of things. That Peter is as profoundly a representative of Christ's presence in the earth as is David. As we all can be. I think that's the heart of the matter, is that our diversity is necessary in order to truly represent all of God's capacities. Thank you.